Hello and welcome to Make It Work, the bi-weekly podcast where we uncover inspiring stories of modern working mamas in Asia who have redefined their career paths whilst putting family first.
Welcome back to Make It Work Asia. I'm your host, Sarah Wong. Today, I cannot wait to bring you Amra Naidoo's story. Amra is an Australian mom of an 18-month-old and recently transplanted her and her family from Singapore to Bangkok, Thailand. She is also better known as the co-founder and general partner of Accelerating Asia, a leading early-stage venture capital fund in Southeast Asia. Whilst we talked about many topics, what really struck me was Amra's sharing about how, despite priding herself as an avid fitness enthusiast who went to the gym 6 days a week, it was her pregnancy, its recovery, and a miscarriage later that literally stopped her in her tracks and taught her some of life's toughest lessons. Get ready to be inspired.
Hey, hi Amra.
Hi, how are you?
Thank you so much for joining us today. Let's just get straight to it. Please tell us about you and your crazy story under 2 minutes if possible.
So my name is Amra. I'm co-founder and general partner at Accelerating Asia, which is an early stage venture fund and startup accelerator. I started this with my co-founder in 2018. And right now I'm based in Bangkok. I just had a baby. She's 1 year old now, happily married, and I have one dog, a little Westie. She's my firstborn, my real firstborn.
Well, congrats on crossing that 1 year mark. I always tell my friends it's really more kudos to the parents and a big, pat on the back because it's not easy surviving that first year. So good job.
Yeah, it was a tough year.
And you relocated from Singapore to Bangkok during that time as well, right?
Yeah, actually, it was the last flight that I could take while I was pregnant, was moving from Singapore to Bangkok. Yeah.
Well, thankfully you made that window.
I gotta say, it wasn't a very comfortable flight. Anything at that stage is not very comfortable. Neither is packing up your apartment or unpacking. But yeah, I'm glad we moved. It was a good choice at the time.
Yeah, I would love to hear a little bit more about, the thoughts behind that because having a baby in a new country is not an easy feat and you're running your own, business too. So yeah, but maybe before that, let's hear a little bit on how your day looks like right now.
So I wake up about 6, get ready. I take my dog out for a little walk and give her breakfast. And then depending if my baby's awake or not, and usually she's not before I go to the gym, I might say hi to her, but I will go to the gym first. My nanny will get baby ready and everything in the morning, and I come back and get myself ready. Then usually I have morning calls, which I'll be kind of playing with my baby at the same time. She sometimes joins the morning calls as well and, sits with me while I have my coffee. After that, I have a bit of heads down time, usually, like external meetings or some kind of focus work. I'll have lunch with my family because I work from home and it's super flexible. My husband works from home as well. So we'll all make time to have lunch together. And then in the afternoon is usually heads down work or going out for meetings. And then in the evenings, depending on, because I do a lot of external facing work. So evening time is usually when a lot of the networking events and things like that happen. So I could be out and about or doing, webinars or things like that. But I do try in the evening to either have dinner or bath time or put my baby to bed. So depending on like what's going on, I'll fit in one of those things. But yeah, that's a pretty average day, I think.
Yeah, thanks for that. So how do you juggle and do you have any productivity hacks?
Yeah, my productivity hack is to block out times for the things that are really important. So my non-negotiable is for gym. That is always in the calendar, usually in the morning, because then I can just get it over and done with at some point during the day. And then other non-negotiables are spending at least one meal time with my family. So whether it's lunch or dinner, and then some kind of playtime as well. I think working from home has meant that, if I have some time, like 20 minutes in between a meeting, that I can go out and, she's pretty small right now, so she's not in daycare or anything like that. I can go out, spend some time with her and then come back. Yeah. So that's kind of the, like making time for the non-negotiable things or the things that are like really important to yourself, because then I feel like you have energy to do all the other things. Yeah. So that would be one. But I think the other, like I would not be able to do anything that I currently do without the help of my nannies. I think, there's a lot of talk about the the wage gap and, the gap in, especially in the industry that I work in, there are not many female fund managers,
Mm.
but it's just not possible if you don't have help in some way. It's absolutely not possible. So yeah, unfortunately, that's how it is. And that's how I'm able to do a lot of different things is that I have a lot of help.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't even try to respond by saying, don't feel bad about it. Like, don't feel that it's an
Oh,
unfortunate,
not at all.
situation. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. At first, I kind of felt bad
Mm,
about it, but then I was like, we designed it this way. When we were thinking about having kids, part of the reason why, we didn't have kids in our 20s is we wanted to be more established in our careers. And I guess a non-negotiable for me is like, I knew that I wanted to work the entire time. I can't imagine myself as a stay-at-home mom. I know that I need to be doing something outside of it. I'm a better parent because I have my own things that I have
mm,
outside. And so, yeah, it was a non-negotiable in terms of having
yeah,
kids. And so then working backwards was like, okay, well, how do we afford
yeah.
this? What does the lifestyle look like? And being very intentional with how you fund it.
Yeah. And I've had another conversation where we talked about this idea of help, and it's really about increasing the number of care kind of points that your child gets, versus outsourcing. Like, it's a little bit of a shift of narrative that I realized I
Mhm.
had to personally overcome for my own decision to get a
Yeah.
helper. And it's definitely a great resource that we can access here so easily, in Asia. So really, yeah, so thankful for that. But before we get into a little bit more about your work and motherhood, I want to hear a little bit about the decision behind moving to Thailand.
Yeah. I think there are a couple of factors. One is from a work perspective. We did see a few opportunities in Thailand, and it was a market that we know you kind of have to be on the ground in order to access the investor scene, but also the startup scene. That was one. But the second thing is that at Accelerating Asia, we're a remote first team. So there's no real need to be based anywhere particular
Mm,
unless you have a specific role that requires you, like you're executing a project in a specific country or city, then yes. But basically, how we looked at it was like lifestyle
mm,
wise, cost of living.
mm,
That's the first thing. What would a lifestyle look like in Singapore versus in Thailand? And then also access to care. That was a really big thing. So, one, in terms of doctors for myself, I felt like I didn't really resonate with the healthcare system in Singapore and the way that it operates.
mm,
But I found a really great doctor here in Thailand, and she's a complete badass. She's like, I don't know, delivered hundreds and hundreds of babies. Her entire office is just like covered with babies. She's a little bit older. She's got a butterfly tattoo on her neck. She's like cool, that kind of thing. So I kind of resonated with her more than I did with the doctors that I had in Singapore. And I found the healthcare system quite risk adverse there. So
mhm,
I 100% believe that if I had stayed in Singapore, I would have had to deliver my baby early and she would have ended up in an ICU. Compared to Thailand with the doctor here who has a lot more experience, it was a very different scenario. So healthcare and quality of care, I just felt was different in Thailand. And then the second thing was being able to afford, like going back to the thing that I said before about
mm,
lifestyle, we have two nannies here in
mhm,
Thailand. And the idea is that we basically have 24/7 care because on nights that I'm coming back late or weeks that I'm traveling to Dhaka for a couple of days and then
yeah,
coming back, I want to make sure that she's got the best care possible. And to your
right,
your comment before about like, oh, feeling guilty
yeah,
and things like that,
yeah,
I've shifted my perspective where I really feel like we're a team.
mm,
Like everybody, we're
yeah,
a team
sure, deep
all coming together to like raise the best possible little
human
human
being,
being.
yes,
Everybody brings something different to this team.
yeah,
And that's really how I work with our nannies and how we like plan our schedules.
mm.
We have weekly stand-ups. It's like we operate like a mini team. Yeah.
Wow, okay, to
Yeah.
bring this product to market.
Exactly. Exactly.
I love it. Oh, that's so
Mhm.
interesting. Yeah, it sounds like the decision to build a lifestyle, around your family in a way that you wanted to was really one of the leading kind of factors for your move to Thailand. And
Yeah.
yeah, well, maybe if we could jump to that a little bit about your experience in Thailand so far as a new mom. Are there any experiences, interesting anecdotes about, what's it like being, obviously this idea of having two nannies is also really interesting. Like, how do you divide the jobs? And yeah, tell us more about the scene in Thailand.
Yeah, so I feel hmm, I feel like in
Mhm.
Thailand, the culture is so different. It's very much a caring culture.
Mm.
Everybody in our building knows my baby. They all know her. They all know what she does on a day-to-day basis. I mean, it's not like she has a pretty exciting life. She's going downstairs playing with other kids or, going to the supermarket,
Mm.
things like that. But everybody knows about her. They're asking about her and they
Mm.
are vested,
Mm.
in her progress. Like, is she walking? Oh, where is she? Is she napping? And I really found that it's like a very community culture
Yeah.
here, which is a little bit different. I think as much as I love Singapore, I feel like you really have to find you have to find
Yeah.
your community.
Mm.
Yeah. So I think that's something that I really like about Thailand.
Like,
In terms of us having two nannies, I mean, so Thailand is very similar to Singapore, where nannies are a big part of the lifestyle here for many families. Having two nannies is a little bit uncommon, but when we were going through the whole process of, well, one, designing our life
mm.
and our lifestyle and being very purposeful about it,
Mhm.
but then also thinking about how we want to operate this team, maybe put it that
Yeah.
way, it was that we really wanted people who were professionals at what they did.
Mm.
They looked at being a nanny as being like, this is what I'm really good at.
Mm.
And this is a skill set that I want to develop. And I have things outside of work, you know.
Mm.
So they don't live with us.
Mm.
They have their own lives outside. And that was something that I was very much like,
Um,
I don't want you to like give up your life in order to come and help me build mine. It needs to be complementary
mm.
in some way. Yeah. So that's why we have two,
Mm.
is so that we have 24/7 care, but it's not someone's like be all and end all, if that makes sense.
Mm. That's so fascinating. Yeah, definitely very interesting. But yeah, thank you so much for giving us a bit of that insight about how community is really part and parcel of the culture in Thailand, and that everybody, yeah, I guess you found your little village of sorts.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Mm.
Maybe that's something about having a kid in general, is that it forces you to find a community, whereas
For
before
sure.
you can kind of just like operate in your own thing, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because now you want to find people that your kid can like play with too. Yeah, it does. Yeah, I mean, there's this whole area where you need to find new friendships, right? As a new mom and with a new stage of life. So I'm glad, yeah, that you've managed to carve something out in a new place for you and your family. Well, so maybe we can talk a little bit about how this transition impacted your approach to work, if at all.
So I think at Accelerating Asia, we always had pretty flexible, like a flexible work environment.
Mm.
And that actually, a lot of people are like, oh, is it because, you're trying to attract more women into the workspace? No, actually, this originally started because my co-founder
Mm.
has a son.
Mm.
And when we were designing our policies and things like that, we were designing it around like
Mm.
him, but also like other parents being able to, like, you know, have time with their kids or have like a working environment where you can do great work,
Yeah.
but it doesn't overtake your family life as
Yeah.
well. And then actually at the time when I didn't have kids, it benefited me as
Yes.
well because, you have a much more flexible working environment. And so obviously now that I do have kids, I think, or a kid, I don't think much has changed. Maybe like I just use my time differently. So we have a 4-day work week. We call it Flexi Fridays. It's not technically a 4-day work week, but the idea is that on Fridays it's flexible. So there are no internal meetings, generally no external meetings planned for that day. And you can use that day to do the personal admin, or you can have heads down time. Or if you get everything done in the first 4 days of the week, pre-COVID, everybody used to travel on Thursday nights and take Friday off kind of thing. Actually, we haven't found impacted productivity in any way.
Yeah.
In fact, most people are working on the Friday. They're just doing, I guess, the kind of thing that moves projects forward, because you don't have the meetings interrupting you.
Yeah.
You can operate at your own pace. Yeah, so we have that. Obviously, we have maternity leave. Everything is remote. We're flexible working hours as well. So yeah, the whole idea is that it doesn't just work for parents, it works for everybody.
Yeah. That's so great. I feel like you guys should be a case study in, the 4-day work week, which we've been talking about. And it doesn't have
Yeah.
to be like no work at all, but like you said, just being flexible about it. Yeah, and it sounds like it's really fostered a good culture, even for people who don't have
Yeah.
kids
I mean, yeah, exactly.
doing it.
Yeah. So we also had been experimenting with unlimited leave. And so
Mm,
we rolled this out a couple of years ago and it's been amazing, I think. Because, it's things like, oh, sorry, my kid is sick. I need to stay at home today, but you're probably still working,
mhm,
generally, like on and off. But not having the restrictions
mm,
of having to be somewhere in a certain, point in time. But I mean, obviously there are emergencies where someone has to cover kind of thing, but an unlimited leave has also been really interesting to roll out and see how people are using their time as well.
okay, what any interesting initial findings?
Most
Decided.
people, yeah, most people don't use it.
Yeah.
I think is
Did it
the
change
most
the
interesting
average
thing.
number of leaves taken at all, or no? Maybe because you guys had such a great
No, I think
culture to begin with.
I think people still take leave, especially because we have a 2-week shutdown period over Christmas.
Mm,
So it's like a forced
mm,
closure. But basically the policy has never been abused.
mm.
Yeah. So that I find really interesting because I mean, hopefully you're hiring the right people,
Right.
right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, maybe that's a good way to weed out those that perhaps aren't the best
Mm.
fit for your company, right? Well, Emma, thank you for sharing about how Celebrating Asia has these great policies in supporting working moms. And it sounds like it's giving you a good platform and a good foundation to build off to figure out how you want to design your life right now as a young mom. Can you also maybe share a little bit about the challenges that you experienced then? I mean, I'm sure even with the best working environment, there are things that you perhaps didn't expect in, becoming a first-time mom.
I think I didn't expect to put it like maybe this sounds a bit cocky, but I was very confident that I'd be a great mom. Like
Mhm.
I wasn't worried because I feel like what I didn't know I would learn. Like I
Right.
would put a lot of time into figuring things out. And so yeah, I've never been worried about being a good mom. I think what has been a challenge or something that was hard was the entire like how long it took to recover after being
Mm,
pregnant and then giving birth. And that was something that I really didn't expect and I wasn't prepared for.
mm,
Yeah, just from a like a physical
yeah.
perspective. And then obviously there's the emotional, right? You're going up and down with all your hormones
Mm,
and also trying to run a business at the same
yeah.
time. And then managing your ability to do things at a certain point in time without trying to sacrifice what you're giving to your work or to your company.
Mm,
So, for example, I mentioned the last flight that I could take was like coming to Bangkok and moving here. That was October 2022.
mhm,
November 2022, we
mm,
had a founders retreat in Penang. So we had all of our startup founders from that particular batch there. And we'd also flown in all of our staff members as well and done like a team retreat at the same time. But because I was so
mm,
pregnant, I could not go. And so it's things like that. I think those kind of challenges, like I didn't expect and I didn't plan for because I obviously didn't expect it. And it made me really realize how much you have to sacrifice in a lot of different ways when you get pregnant and then when you give birth and then have a baby afterwards. Like having the baby afterwards, I'm very lucky because our work is so
mm,
flexible and we've designed it this way. So that part has been covered. But I think it was everything before that was challenging. Like it was really challenging to balance it all.
mm. Yeah. So maybe if you could give yourself some advice, your younger self, how would you go back and tell younger Amra just early on in your pregnancy? Like, what would you tell yourself to?
I would tell myself not to be so hard on myself
Mm.
and to just go with the flow. Yeah.
Yeah, these are the top two lessons you learn as a parent. Like your birth plan never goes according to plan A, number one. And then nothing's really linear in terms of like how much effort you try to put into maybe sleep training or, baby let really, yeah, it's not a linear kind of input and output thing that you can control. So yes, go with the flow. I hear you.
Yeah, I think when it comes to like balancing work and children, maybe that's probably the most challenging thing, right? It's like the balance that obviously everybody talks about.
Yeah, that there's no, I don't know. I'm in the school of thought where there's no real, I guess, balance. You just kind of deal with different priorities at different times. And like you say, be really clear on what are your non-negotiables, whether it's like spending time or maybe doing bedtime or making sure that you are having good communication with your managers, your coworkers. That is, I think, a good way to think about it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you just heard that screaming in the background. It's not speaking of Alice.
All good, all good. I was just trying to prevent my 18-month-old from climbing onto my lap just now. I don't know if you saw that. I've learned how to do it pretty well, while keeping eye contact. Yeah. Yeah, these are things we have to learn. So, okay, maybe tell us also a little bit about your spouse and how you guys work together in this team that you've built.
So we have very different personalities and I guess ways of approaching things. It has been so far very complementary, especially as we're building this team. We both have experience in building our own teams and managing people and things like that. But I think what we realized is that when it's your baby, your expectations are higher than that of a normal job, right? Because this is your baby. This is someone that you're like trusting to come in and essentially parent them, right? We're hiring substitute parents, right, to come in when we're not able to be there. So I think that has been interesting because we both have very different ways of looking at things and managing people. I think one of the defaults that we learned very early on is that most nannies assume that the father is not as involved with the baby. And so whenever he would be looking after her or anything, they would be hovering, like really hovering close by. Or some, when early on, like one of our nannies would just like take the baby away from him and be like, kind of like, oh, your time is done now kind of thing. I'm going to take the baby away. And so I think there's just been a lot of unexpected things like that have come up that we both had to figure out. But if anything, having a baby has strengthened our relationship. Now we have a little product, right? That we're both tinkering on, right?
Running experiments on A/B testing. Is it broccoli or is it carrot?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And now that you've, put that framework on parenting, it's very interesting to figure out, which sprint you're on. And it does feel like it because things keep changing, right? Especially at such a young baby, things change all the time. So you have to really just respond to that. And it sounds like, you and your spouse have also really figured out a way to balance the nuances of where you are and the roles that you all play. What about, work-wise? How has your spouse been complementary, I suppose, with how you do this juggle?
Yeah. So the great thing about both of us having our own businesses is that we get it, right? There are certain things that you just understand, right? I understand if he's having a tough time with his team, whatever at work, and he gets it if I'm having the same thing, which is a little bit different if, one person in the relationship is an entrepreneur and the other one isn't. Like, it's very different sets of challenges that you have. The other thing is that his team is also a remote team and he also has a very flexible working environment. So, like during the week, if right now we had to up and go and take her to the doctor, one of us would be able to move things around so that they'd be able to go, because we usually control our own schedules, right? And it's the same thing with like weekly swimming classes. They've got baby swimming classes and only parents are allowed to take. So it's not something that, our nanny could do, but it's something that either of us, will take it in turns and block it out into our schedule. So that's been good. I think also that the nature of our work is very different. So he is not as external facing with his business compared to myself. And I travel a lot for work. Towards the end of last year, I was in Singapore. Even though I live in Thailand, I was in Singapore every week, Monday through to Thursday, and then coming back on the weekends. And he, especially because we have two really great nannies, have been able to step up and take on that load as well while I'm traveling. So yeah, that's been really good in terms of us being a good team, which is funny actually, by the way.
Yeah.
Every time I went to Singapore, people would be like, "Where's your baby?" And I'm like, "Oh, she's at home." And they'd be like, "With who?" I'm like, her father, the other 50% of this relationship. And we were so shocked.
Yeah, what a good dad, right? He gets all the credit.
Exactly. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So especially with you guys having your own businesses, I can see that it can be both a challenge, but also a complementary way of working, and that you'll have your own flexibility. So now, Amra, as we move towards closing on this conversation, which has been, super interesting and very insightful about how y'all are making it work where you are. Can you share a little bit about some of the challenges or maybe some dark times that difficult experiences you had? What are some lessons that you drew?
Yeah. So I guess, and I haven't been quiet about this either, but
Mhm.
I really disliked, and my mom says that you should never use the word hate because it's a really strong word to describe something, but I hated being pregnant. And I think it's because maybe the lesson, I guess, out of this, I think it's because I had an expectation of what it should be and it didn't meet that expectation. Being, you know, I had all the symptoms, like every single negative symptom you can think of, I had. And it just made the entire process just painful. Like the last 2, 3 months for me were just really painful. I was so swollen,
Mm,
like all the water buildup
mm,
and everything that I couldn't walk. I had pelvic pain. So like that was painful, even just like even when I was walking. I started contractions early. So I
mm,
was on bed rest for the last month. And so, yeah, the entire process I just really didn't like. And I think also because I had been very active before. So, I was doing CrossFit, I was doing aerial yoga,
yeah.
I was at the gym 6 times a week, sometimes twice a day, and just like absolutely loving it. And everybody told me, don't worry, like you'll still be able to do all of your sports while you're pregnant. And you know what? That is a lie. Like that is absolutely, there's no truth to that in any way. And I wish people would say that because then I would have been more prepared for like setting expectations about, what amazing things your body goes through and how to adapt. Instead, I was like resenting the entire time, being like, people told me I could do this. I thought I could do this. And now all of a sudden, like, I was doing Muay Thai and BJJ. That was the first thing to go, obviously, because it's contact
Yes, yes.
sport, right? So that went, and I was like, okay, it's okay. I still have aerial, I still have CrossFit, I still have yoga. Aerial went straight after that because the silk ties around your waist, they don't want you dizzy in the air, all of that kind of stuff falling. And I was like, okay, fine, I get it, but I'm still a bit annoyed, like because I just hadn't prepared myself for it.
Okay.
And then CrossFit kind of slowly tapered off. And then yoga was the one thing that went through, but it's like from working on the splits and doing a back bend and handstands
Mm,
to like barely being able to do downward dog. Like it's a huge difference, right? So I think there was that. Like it was really difficult. And so when I had my baby, in my mind, I was like, oh, the pregnancy is going to be over and I can just focus on getting back to being me. And like, I don't know, just in my mind, I thought it would be done, but it wasn't done,
There's
right? Because
recovery.
yeah, there's recovery. So I had to have a
Mm,
C-section because my baby was in breech. And the C-section itself was not a good experience for me. Like it was just not a great experience. And I think if I had to do it again, I'd just be like, please knock me out. I don't want to be awake for any of this. Like introduce me to the baby in a couple of hours time when I had time to like decompress kind of thing. So the C-section, I didn't have a good experience with that. And then C-section recovery. Now, this is another thing where everybody was like, don't worry, it's an everyday surgery. Lots of people go through this. Recovery will be quick. Again, absolutely not the case. This is major surgery.
yeah.
And it took me about 9 months to properly recover from
Yeah.
that. And I wouldn't even say properly recover, but get back to a stage where I could go back to CrossFit like maybe 4 or 5 times a week,
Mm,
still
mhm.
modified, but like, no pain. So it was a tough amount of time. And during this period of time, we went through a phase of being like, do I really want to have another baby?
Mm,
Like that was a lot. And as we were talking about before, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to have another baby super quick, like back to back. We'll just get it all over and done with. And so we were trying to get pregnant. We got pregnant and ended up losing the
mm,
baby. But
yeah.
as things are with my entire experience of pregnancy and everything, it wasn't just, I guess, a normal miscarriage. It was an ectopic pregnancy and it ended up being an emergency
Mm,
surgery. So I was literally going in and I thought I was having a miscarriage. I was pretty sure I was having a
mm,
miscarriage. Um, and then it ended up being like a couple of checks and being rushed
mm,
literally from the doctor up to the emergency ward.
mhm,
Within 2 hours, I was like already,
mm,
my fallopian tube had ruptured. I had a lot of internal bleeding. And I think, yeah, it made me really, really think about what we put our bodies through. as women to have babies and like
Mm,
how tough it is.
mm,
Like, I mean, there's this experience, but I know a lot of people have difficulties getting pregnant in the first place, the entire IVF
mm,
process. I have a lot of friends that have gone through that
yeah,
is a
yeah,
lot as well.
yeah,
And so, I mean, I've gotten help, of course. Like, I have a therapist, and I'm talking about it now, and I've processed it
yeah.
all. But I think to your question about like what have I learned about all of this, it would be that our bodies are freaking amazing. Like the
You said it.
human body is just amazing, and I learned so much about the capabilities of the female human body throughout this entire process. I mean, like one small thing, which I didn't even know, this is how bad my high school biology was. I didn't know fallopian tubes moved around. Did you
Oh,
know this? Like,
do they?
yeah, yeah. So like, I thought,
Right there with you.
because the high school pictures, right?
Yeah,
It's got the
it's just
two
always
arms, the
there.
fallopian tube attached to the ovaries.
Right.
That is not what happens in there. Your ovaries are just in your abdominal cavity, and your fallopian tubes move around. So I lost a fallopian tube, and the first thing I was thinking was, this is going to affect my ability to get pregnant again because now I only have one. But then I learned that your fallopian tubes are not attached to anything; they just like wander around. So when you release an egg,
It
a
catches up.
fallopian tube just comes, picks it up, and takes it in, right? And so if you only have one, it's just like having one arm, and it just like, yeah. And that's why I was like, the human body is just amazing. So I think there's like one thing. But the second thing is like, I learned how strong I am.
Mm,
You know, like after having gone through all of this and each time just being, coming out in a really negative place and being like, oh, I can't get any worse, right? Like it's finished. Like that phase is
yeah.
finished. Like being pregnant is finished. Now I'm going to recover, right? And then recovery took so long. Like it just felt like things were, kept getting extended out. But yeah, coming out of it, I'm like, we're really strong to go through all of this. Like there are so many, like I look at every mum now
Mm,
differently than I did before.
yeah. Yeah,
Like,
for sure. Yes. Just realizing
yeah,
there's just
it's a
this,
shared
yeah, there
experience.
is a unspoken bond, I would say, yeah, with a fellow mom because it brings you to a different place. You change and you realize, yeah, how much you have to go through. And like you say, we are stronger. And this is so great, like a great way to wrap it up because this is one of the reasons why I want to have these stories out there, right? To hear how people have gone through the ups and downs, but emerged stronger on the other side. So thank you so much, Amra, for
Yeah.
sharing your story. Yeah, I know it couldn't have been easy to be open and upfront about all the ups and downs, but I know that your story will definitely encourage someone out there. And I thank you again for just pushing the message. I think there's just a lot to be said about just going through the ups and downs and coming out of it in a different way. And sometimes we don't know how it ends up, right? This podcast was focused on work, and sometimes we just don't know where it brings us for work. And it's okay. It doesn't have to be a linear kind of progression or the way that we expect it to be. So yeah, that's why I do what I do by highlighting these interesting, inspiring stories. So
Thank you for
sharing.
having me. Thank you for the opportunity.
Well, one last question that I always have. What is one thing you want listeners to take away from your story?
Maybe two things. If I can push the envelope. One is that you're stronger than you think you are. Yeah, I think that's kind of what I realized throughout this entire process. And after talking to other mums, people who've gone through similar experiences, is that, like you said, when you're going through something, you feel like that moment in time is what it's going to be like forever, right? And I think realizing that things can change and that you're a strong person and that you're able to deal with it or to get help to deal with
Mm,
things is really valuable to keep coming back to. I obviously went through some pretty dark times, and it was different people that pulled me out of those dark times.
mm,
Something with my husband, I have an executive coach, it would be friends or family. And then, with the last experience, it was me proactively being like, I need to talk to someone,
mm.
like, and like going and finding a professional. So you're stronger than you think. And I think you know what you need as well. And then the second thing to take away from this is to like design your life. Like I think, going through the process of designing how we wanted the whole nanny situation, the work situation, everything. It's taken a lot to like find other people who are doing really different things, right? And how they're designing their lives and like taking little bits of that and like applying it to your own. And so if you're not happy with where you're at, like to just think about what can I do to redesign what this looks like.
So good. All right. Thank you so much, Amra.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to Make It Work, where we uncover inspiring stories of modern working mamas in Asia who have redefined their careers whilst putting family first. Please help others discover the show by leaving a review and rating on wherever you get your podcast. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Meanwhile, here's to you, making it work.